Back in the early 90s, when computers were becoming more common in the classroom, there was an educational game that everyone played. Some of you may remember it. It was called the Oregon Trail. Anybody remember the Oregon Trail? A couple people my age and a little older. Oregon Trail was a game of strategic decision making. You were a wagon leader and you were traveling from Missouri to Oregon in the year 1848. You had to decide on the journey different strategic decisions, when you had to rest, when you had to hunt, when you had to cross a river, and so on. And as you were making all these decisions, all these random things were happening to you that either prevented you or assisted you to the next level. Sickness, broken wagon parts, bad weather, and even death. We can imagine the journey of the Magi was somewhat like this educational game. The gospel, according to Matthew, that we just heard, tells us that the Magi saw a star and they followed it. They followed it to the place where the Christ child was. They traveled from the east, probably modern-day Iraq or Iran, and they went from there to Jerusalem, then to Bethlehem. Their route could have been anywhere from 800 to 1,000 miles long, and they made that journey on foot, which took them many months to travel. Like the Oregon Trail computer game, theirs was a journey of strategic decision making at every step of the way. So today, let's put ourselves in their shoes for a moment and think about some of these strategic decisions we would have to make if we were on that same journey today. The first is to pay attention. The Magi were on the lookout for the star. They didn't just go to work and come home and watch the game and take the kids to practice and live as if this is all there is. They went deeper. They were on the lookout. Each of us is invited to do the same. We have to notice the restlessness in our hearts. We have to ask the big questions. Who am I? What is my life about? Where did I come from? And where am I going? As a church and a parish, we're also invited to do this. We have to go deeper, noticing how the world has changed, how the church has changed, and focusing on the Lord and on the mission He has given us. Are we ready and willing to make this first important strategic decision, which is to pay attention? Are we ready and willing to do that? So in the game in Oregon Trail, you would all be out now. Are we ready to make that decision? Okay, then we're ready to move to the second level, which is the second important decision that the Magi had to make. And that was to set out and be led. Not only were they paying attention, they actually now had to move, and they had to be led. The Magi followed the star. They didn't try and stay in the comfort of their own home or their town or their routine. They didn't try to determine for themselves what the star meant or where they wanted it to lead them. They surrendered to all of this and they trusted. And each of us is invited to do that. We have to strive to live the Christian life and all that's a part of it. Not trying to determine for ourselves what that will look like, but receiving it from the Lord as a gift and allowing Him to lead us and allowing His church to lead us. As a church and a parish, we're also invited to do this, to set out and be led. We have to move beyond the comfort of being in maintenance mode when we do things simply because that's always the way we've done them. There's a joke. The 7 last words of Christ on the cross were, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." Do you know what the 7 last words of the church are? We have always done it that way. Instead of making those our 7 last words, closing the doors after them, we have to stay focused on mission. So are we ready and willing to make the second important decision, which is to set out and be led? And now we're ready to move to the third level. The third decision the Magi had to make was to keep going. They had to keep going. We can imagine all the difficulties that a journey of 800 to 1,000 miles over a period of many months brought. From the annoying people they were traveling with who had different opinions about everything, to bad weather, to not enough food or water, to lack of shelter, to getting lost or getting sick, and to just utter exhaustion. Through all of this and more, the Magi kept following that star. Each of us is invited to do the same. When our life gets busy, when we're scandalized by others' opinions or by leadership, when things feel spiritually dry, when we don't like something in our long list of things we don't like, change, church music, a homily we heard, the temperature in the building, when we're struggling with deep things like temptation and sin and guilt, and when we're mocked or dismissed or persecuted, we have to keep going. As a church and a parish, we also are invited to do this, to keep going, especially when we're called to participate and sacrifice in new and challenging ways to help us focus and stay focused on mission. So are we ready to make this third important strategic decision, which is to keep going? So now we're ready for the fourth and final level or strategic decision of the Magi. And that was they had to be changed. They had to allow themselves to be changed. After the Magi came to the Christ child and offered him gifts, we heard in the gospel, they departed for their country by another way. Don't let those words, don't miss the significance of those words. The Magi didn't stay in their new comfort zone. They didn't go back the same familiar way they came. They allowed themselves to be changed. They went home by a different way. They were new people. Each of us is invited to do that also, to embrace a conversion of heart, which is a change of mindset and attitude, a new way of speaking and acting. And that should come from prayer and the scriptures and the teachings of the church and the sacraments and all that we're about. And as a church and a parish, we're also invited to do this, to allow ourselves to be changed. As we focus on mission together, we need to get more involved and to make sure our parishes are here for years to come. The journey of the Magi is a beautiful and a powerful one. It is one that, like the Oregon Trail computer game, involves strategic decision making, paying attention, setting out and being led, not stopping and being changed. But here's the difference, the end of the journey. The end of the journey of the Magi is very, very different than any strategic computer game or anything like it. It is not just a journey from one place to another. It is a journey to a whole new way of being. A whole new way of being. If we pay attention, if we set out and be led, if we keep going, if we allow ourselves to be changed, we too will reach the end of the journey of the Magi. We heard in the gospel, they were overjoyed when they came to Christ, because our journey will have led us not to a different place, but to the one who is our very life and our salvation. So today, let's pray that the grace of God and some strategic decision making on our part will help us to get to the end of that journey, which is Christ the Lord.